The story of the New Kingdom begins with a reconquest. It rises from the ashes of a divided land. For a century, foreign rulers known as the Hyksos had controlled Lower Egypt. They brought new technologies like the horse and chariot. But their presence was a deep insult to Egyptian pride. From their southern stronghold in Thebes, a line of native princes plotted their revenge. They gathered their strength. They prepared for a great war of liberation. This was not just a battle for land. It was a battle for the soul of Egypt itself. The gods, they believed, had willed them to restore order and drive the invaders from their sacred soil. The final push came under a pharaoh named Ahmose I. His campaign was relentless and brutal. He besieged the Hyksos capital of Avaris in the Nile Delta. He pursued them out of Egypt and into the lands beyond. With this victory, around 1550 BCE, Egypt was whole again. Ahmose I became the founder of a new dynasty, the 18th. This was more than just a restoration of the old ways. It marked the birth of a new Egypt. An Egypt that was stronger, more ambitious, and more outward-looking than ever before. The trauma of foreign rule had taught the Egyptians a harsh lesson. They would never again be vulnerable. The New Kingdom's success was not an accident. It was built on solid foundations laid by its early rulers. The memory of the Hyksos occupation was a powerful motivator. The pharaohs understood that to prevent another invasion, they needed to control the lands beyond their borders. This led to a new foreign policy. It was aggressive and expansionist. Egypt would create a buffer zone. It would conquer and dominate its neighbors. A professional army was created. This was a significant change from the old conscript militias. The introduction of the horse-drawn chariot transformed the Egyptian military into a fast and deadly force. This imperial ambition required a new kind of state. A state organized for war and for the administration of a vast and diverse empire. The pharaoh was its supreme commander. He often led his troops into battle himself, cultivating an image as an invincible warrior king. Alongside the military, a sophisticated civil administration developed. This efficient government machine ensured that the wealth of the empire flowed smoothly to its center. The gold of Nubia and the timber of Lebanon were not just spoils of war. They were vital resources that fueled the Egyptian economy and paid for the pharaoh's grand projects. The pharaohs of the 18th dynasty were prolific builders. They transformed the religious landscape of Egypt. Their primary focus was the great god of their home city, Amun of Thebes. As Thebes became the capital of the empire, Amun was merged with the traditional sun god Ra. He became Amun-Ra, king of the gods. His temple at Karnak grew into the largest religious complex in the world. Each successive pharaoh added to it. They built new pylons, courts, and chapels. They erected towering obelisks and colossal statues. Karnak was a statement of power. Among these great builders was a ruler who broke all conventions. Her name was Hatshepsut. She was the daughter of one pharaoh and the wife of another. When her husband, Thutmose II, died, his heir was just a young child. Hatshepsut initially ruled as regent, but she was not content to remain in the shadows. She took the bold step of declaring herself pharaoh. She adopted all the royal titles and regalia. In official art, she was often depicted as a male king, complete with a false beard. This was a radical move. It challenged the traditional order of a deeply conservative society. Hatshepsut's reign was not defined by military conquest. It was a period of peace and prosperity. She focused on trade and architecture. Her greatest achievement was her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri. It is a stunning building, cut into the cliffs on the west bank of the Nile at Thebes. Its elegant terrace design is unlike any other temple in Egypt. The walls are covered in beautiful reliefs. They depict the key events of her reign, including her supposed divine birth and a famous trading expedition to the distant land of Punt. This expedition brought back incense, myrrh, and other exotic goods, showcasing the reach and wealth of her kingdom. Hatshepsut ruled for over 2 decades. She proved that a woman could govern Egypt as effectively as any man. After her death, her stepson, Thutmose III, finally took the throne. He tried to erase her memory. He had her name and image removed from many monuments. But he could not erase her masterpiece. The temple at Deir el-Bahri stands today as a monument to one of the most remarkable rulers in Egyptian history. Midway through the New Kingdom, a pharaoh came to the throne who would turn Egypt upside down. His name was Amenhotep IV. He launched a religious revolution that shook the country to its core. He rejected the traditional pantheon of gods. He declared that there was only one true God. This was the Aten, the physical disk of the sun. He changed his own name to Akhenaten, which means effective for the Aten. This was a radical departure from centuries of religious belief. It was the world's first known attempt at monotheism. It was a direct challenge to the powerful priesthood of Amun-Ra. Akhenaten's revolution was total. He moved the capital from Thebes to a brand new city built in the desert. He called it Akhetaten, the horizon of the Aten. Today it is known as Amarna. Here he and his beautiful wife, Nefertiti, presided over a new court and a new religion. The art of the Amarna period was also revolutionary. It broke with the formal, idealized style of the past. It depicted the royal family with startling realism. Akhenaten himself was shown with an elongated skull, a long neck, and a potbelly. This new style was intimate and sometimes strange. It reflected the unique vision of the heretic king. But this new world was not to last. Akhenaten's focus on his religious revolution meant he neglected the empire. Egypt's influence abroad began to wane. At home, his changes were deeply unpopular. When Akhenaten died, his revolution died with him. His city was abandoned. His new religion was suppressed. The old gods were restored. The priests of Amun-Ra returned to power, more influential than ever before. Akhenaten was branded a heretic. His name was erased from the king lists. Akhenaten's successor was a young boy named Tutankhaten. His name meant living image of the Aten. But under the influence of the old priesthood, he soon changed it to Tutankhamun, living image of Amun. He moved the court back to Thebes. He issued a decree restoring the old temples and their cults. His reign was short. He died at the age of 19. He would have been a minor, forgotten pharaoh. But fate had a different plan. In 1922, the British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. It was almost perfectly intact. The fabulous treasures it contained gave the world a dazzling glimpse into the wealth and splendor of Egypt's golden age. After the turmoil of the Amarna period, Egypt needed a strong leader to restore its glory. It found one in a new dynasty of pharaohs, the Ramessides. The greatest of them all was Ramses II. He ruled for an astonishing 67 years and came to be known as Ramses the Great. His long reign was a time of stability, prosperity, and honestly monumental construction. He was the ultimate self-promoter, covering Egypt with temples, statues, and inscriptions celebrating his own achievements. He wanted to ensure that his name would live forever, and in this, he definitely succeeded. Ramses II was also a great warrior. Early in his reign, he faced a major threat from the Hittite Empire in the Near East. The two powers clashed at the Battle of Kadesh in what is now Syria. Ramses boldly claimed a stunning victory. His inscriptions describe how he single-handedly turned the tide of the battle when his army was on the brink of defeat. The reality was probably more of a stalemate, but honestly, that did not matter. Ramses presented it as a triumph. The battle eventually led to the world's first known peace treaty, a remarkable diplomatic achievement that brought stability to the region for many years. With peace secured, Ramses embarked on an unparalleled building program. He completed the great hypostyle hall at Karnak. He built his own vast mortuary temple, the Ramesseum. He even founded a new capital city in the delta, Pyrameses. But his most famous project was the rock-cut temples at Abu Simbel in Nubia. The larger temple features 4 colossal statues of Ramses himself, seated on his throne. They are, honestly, a breathtaking display of royal power. Twice a year, the rising sun illuminates the inner sanctuary, a true marvel of ancient engineering and astronomy. These monuments were designed to impress. They were a clear message to anyone who saw them. Egypt was mighty, and its pharaoh was, well, divine. Ramses lived a long life. He fathered over 100 children and outlived many of them. By the time he died in his early 90s, he was a living legend. His reign is often seen as the last great peak of the New Kingdom. He had restored Egypt's prestige, filled its coffers with wealth, and covered its land with magnificent monuments. He set a standard that all later pharaohs tried to emulate. For centuries after his death, Egyptians looked back on his reign as a true golden age. He was, and honestly still remains, the embodiment of pharaonic power and splendor. So what was life like for ordinary Egyptians during this golden age? Well, for the elite, the nobles, priests, and high-ranking officials, it was a time of great luxury. They lived in these spacious, beautifully decorated villas, owned fine furniture, wore elegant linen clothes, and adorned themselves with intricate jewelry. Their tombs, like the one belonging to Tutankhamun, were filled with objects they hoped to enjoy in the afterlife. The wealth of the empire really provided them with a comfortable and sophisticated lifestyle. But for the common people, the farmers, laborers, and craftsmen, life was much harder. Most of the population were peasants, and their lives were dictated by the rhythm of the Nile. They worked the fields, planting and harvesting the crops that fed the nation. Their surplus grain was collected as tax, and this tax supported the state, the army, and the priesthood. In addition to farming, many were conscripted for state labor projects. They were the ones who built the great temples and carved the tombs. They lived in simple mud brick houses in villages scattered along the river. Their lives were a cycle of hard work, with religion providing both comfort and meaning. Religion honestly permeated every aspect of Egyptian life. The Egyptians worshipped a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with their own role and personality. Amun-Ra was the king of the gods. Osiris was the ruler of the underworld. Isis was the divine mother. Horus was the god of kingship. Ordinary people made offerings at local shrines and participated in great public festivals, like the Opet festival at Thebes. During this festival, the statues of the gods were carried in a grand procession from Karnak to Luxor Temple. It was a time of celebration and a powerful reminder of the connection between the pharaoh, the gods, and the people. The Egyptians had a profound belief in the afterlife. They believed that death was not the end, but a transition to another world. To ensure a successful journey, the body had to be preserved through mummification. The tomb was seen as an eternal home for the deceased, equipped with everything they would need in the next life. This included food, furniture, tools, and magical spells. The famous Book of the Dead was a collection of these spells, designed to help the deceased navigate the dangers of the underworld and achieve eternal life. This focus on eternity is, honestly, one of the most defining features of ancient Egyptian civilization. The New Kingdom was, without a doubt, an age of empire, and empire is built with military force. The Egyptian army was transformed into a formidable professional fighting machine. The key to its success was the chariot corps, which was the elite arm of the military. A chariot was a light, two-wheeled vehicle pulled by two horses. It carried a driver and an archer, making it fast, mobile, and deadly. Chariots could be used to harass the enemy, break up their formations, and pursue them when they fled. The pharaoh himself often rode into battle at the head of his chariot divisions, which must have been a terrifying and inspiring sight for his soldiers. The infantry formed the bulk of the army. They were organized into divisions, each named after a major god, armed with bronze-tipped spears, battle axes, and swords known as khopesh. They carried large shields for protection. Archers provided long-range support. The army was actually a career path for many young men, offering the chance of advancement, status, and a share in the spoils of war. Soldiers who fought bravely could be rewarded with land, gold, and other honors. This created a loyal and motivated military class dedicated to the service of the pharaoh. The New Kingdom saw Egypt engage in major conflicts with the great powers of the Near East. Thutmose III, Hatshepsut's successor, was a brilliant military strategist. He led at least 17 campaigns into Syria and Palestine, with his greatest victory at the Battle of Megiddo. He led his army through a narrow, dangerous mountain pass to surprise his enemies, and the victory secured Egyptian dominance in the region for decades. The spoils of these campaigns were immense: prisoners of war, livestock, and vast quantities of gold, silver, and other precious materials. This tribute funded the ongoing imperial project. The most famous military encounter of the era was the Battle of Kadesh, fought by Ramses II against the Hittites. It was one of the largest chariot battles ever fought, with thousands of chariots clashing on the plains of Syria. While Ramses' own account is highly exaggerated, The battle really demonstrates the scale and sophistication of New Kingdom warfare. Even though it wasn't a decisive victory, it ultimately led to a lasting peace. The Egyptian army had proven its strength. It had secured the empire's borders and established Egypt as one of the two great superpowers of the late Bronze Age, a military giant feared and respected throughout the ancient world. The pharaohs of the New Kingdom chose a new burial ground. They abandoned the pyramids of the Old and Middle Kingdoms, which were just too visible and too easy for tomb robbers to find. The new pharaohs wanted a more secure resting place, so they chose a remote, sun-baked valley on the west bank of the Nile at Thebes. It was a desolate, rocky place, dominated by a natural peak that actually resembled a pyramid. This became the Valley of the Kings. For nearly 500 years, this was the secret cemetery of Egypt's rulers. The tombs were not buildings, they were elaborate underground structures, cut deep into the limestone cliffs. A long, sloping corridor led down through a series of antechambers to the burial chamber itself. The walls were covered with stunningly beautiful paintings and hieroglyphic texts. These were not just decoration. They were a magical machine, designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful rebirth in the afterlife. The texts were drawn from religious works like the Book of the Dead, providing the spells and knowledge the king would need to navigate the underworld and join the gods. These tombs were filled with incredible treasures. Everything the pharaoh would need for eternity was buried with him: gilded chariots, ornate furniture, beautiful jewelry, fine clothing, and precious oils and perfumes. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb gave us a direct window into this world. Its contents were a dazzling display of the wealth and craftsmanship of the New Kingdom. The famous gold mask that covered the pharaoh's mummy is honestly one of the most iconic objects ever found. It's a masterpiece of the goldsmith's art and a symbol of the immense resources commanded by the rulers of this golden age. While the pharaohs were buried in hidden tombs, they built vast mortuary temples on the edge of the cultivated land. These were not tombs. They were temples for the king's own cult after his death. Here, priests would perform daily rituals and make offerings to sustain the pharaoh's spirit in the afterlife. Temples like the Ramesseum of Ramses II were enormous complexes, including towering statues, grand halls, and vast storage magazines. These monuments, along with the temples of the gods at Karnak and Luxor, were powerful statements of the pharaoh's divine status and his connection to eternity. They were built to last forever. No empire lasts forever. The decline of the New Kingdom was a long and slow process. By the reign of Ramses III, about a century after Ramses the Great, the signs of trouble were clear. A new wave of migrations was sweeping across the eastern Mediterranean, and a mysterious confederation of peoples known as the Sea Peoples attacked Egypt by land and sea. Ramses III fought them off in a series of desperate battles, recording his victories on the walls of his mortuary temple at Medinet Habu. He saved Egypt from invasion, but the effort really exhausted the country. The wars were costly and drained the treasury. At the same time, Egypt was losing control of its empire. The gold mines of Nubia were becoming depleted, and tribute from the Near East dried up. The state was running out of money, and this led to internal problems. During the reign of Ramses III, the workmen building the royal tombs went on strike because they hadn't been paid their grain rations. This was actually the first recorded strike in history, and it was a clear sign that the system was breaking down. The central authority of the pharaoh was weakening, and power began to shift away from the king and into the hands of others. The high priests of Amun-Ra at Thebes became increasingly powerful, controlling vast estates and enormous wealth. By the end of the New Kingdom, the high priest of Amun was the de facto ruler of southern Egypt. The country was effectively split in two. The pharaoh ruled from the delta in the north, while the priests controlled the south. This division fatally weakened the state, marking the end of the unified kingdom that had been the source of Egypt's strength. The final blow came around 1077 BCE. The last Ramesside pharaoh, Ramses XI, died. The throne was seized by a northern official named Smendes, and the high priest of Amun, Herihor, formalized his rule over the south. The New Kingdom was over. Egypt entered a period of political fragmentation and foreign domination known as the Third Intermediate Period. The Golden Age had passed, but its legacy was immense. The monuments, the art, and the ideas of the new kingdom would inspire awe for millennia. They created an image of pharaonic Egypt that continues to capture the imagination of the world today.